Are accustomed to look at a series or a sermon involving a series that we're looking at, going through the Bible, quite an extended series, I might say, to which we are not even close to being finished. But this morning this week, we're going to depart from that and take advantage, of course, of the mindset of the American society. And that is, a lot of people today are thinking about the resurrection of Christ. And so I want to use that to our advantage and talk a little bit about that. And certainly I want to point out as we begin that we're not commanded that this is something we have to do on this day, but it is certain within our Christian liberties to do that, to look at the resurrection of Christ, talk about the importance and the significance of it, and to focus upon it. And so I invite you to look at a lesson with me that has been entitled 3 Questions to Answer on Easter. And of course, we're basing that upon our American tradition of Easter being the day that Jesus was resurrected from the dead. Originally, when I put this lesson together, I entitled it 3 Answers to Ask. But I don't just want us to ask, I want us to answer these questions. And so that's kind of going to be our focus this morning. Now, it's probably no secret or no surprise to anyone in the audience today that when you read the Bible, Jesus claimed to be the Messiah and the very Son of God. And on one occasion, the Jewish leaders asked him to give them some type of sign that he was indeed the Son of God. That is recorded for us in Matthew chapter 12 and beginning at about verse 39. And here's what Jesus does. The Bible says, or Matthew records, that Jesus answered and said unto them, An evil and adulterous generation seeketh after a sign, and there shall no sign be given it, but the sign of the prophet Jonas. For as Jonas was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Now understand that the Jewish leaders wanted Jesus on the spot to immediately perform a miracle. And the reason that they wanted him to do this, to give them this sign or this miracle, is to prove to them that he was indeed the Son of God, which he claimed to be. And so here's what Jesus does. He says, you guys want a sign? Okay, I'm going to give you a sign. It's not going to be right here and right now. I'm going to give you a miracle, but here's what that miracle is going to be. Just as Jonah was in the night, or 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of a great fish, so the Son of Man is going to be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. But then just like Jonah came out of the belly of that great fish after 3 days and 3 nights, the Son of Man is going to come out of the earth after 3 days and 3 nights. I often think about that comparison, and just to depart a little bit from the main focus of our lesson this morning, and think about the prophet Jonah. But I often wondered what Jonah thought as he was in the belly of that fish for 3 days and 3 nights. I don't know that anybody else, I know the Bible says that the sailors that were with him, they threw him overboard. I don't know that anybody else saw him get swallowed by that great fish, but if they did, if you and I saw somebody get swallowed by a great fish today, what would you think? I would think, well, they're good as dead, wouldn't you? I imagine that Jonah probably, as he was in the belly of that great fish, he probably thought, well, I'm as good as dead. But 3 days later, the Bible tells us, God directed that great fish to spit Jonah out upon dry land. I don't know about you, but if I was Jonah, I think I would have hit the ground running. I wouldn't have looked back or, spent much time, at least, on the shore of that great body of water thinking about what had happened. But Jesus used that Old Testament story, and he tells the people of this day. Now notice the significance of this. This is the sign that you're going to know I'm the Son of God. This is the miracle that's going to solidify all these things that I've told you based upon, I lived in heaven before I came here. I came to this earth. I assumed the form of a man. This is the miracle that's going to confirm all those things that I've said and has been prophesied of me. God or Jesus would spend the same amount of time that in the grave as Jonah spent in the belly of that great fish. And then, just like God broke Jonah out of the belly of that great fish, God would break him out of the heart of the earth. And all 4 gospel writers, all 4 of those gospel writers describe the events that surround the morning of Jesus' resurrection. Now, each one of us provides us with a different minute details about the events themselves. But what I want to focus on this morning is going to be found in John's account. So if you have your Bibles, I'd invite you to turn over with me to John chapter 20. I'm not going to read everything that's said here. Some of those things we're going to talk about a little later tonight in our studies. But I do want to point out, beginning in verse 1, what John records about the events of that morning of Jesus' resurrection. He says this, beginning in verse 1, "The first day of the week cometh Mary Magdalene early, when it was yet dark, unto the sepulchre, and seeth the stone taken away from the sepulchre. Then she runneth and cometh to Simon Peter and to the other disciple whom Jesus loved, and saith unto them, They have taken away the Lord out of the sepulchre, and we know not where they have laid him." The resurrection of Jesus, or at least the morning of Jesus' resurrection, what I glean when I read it is it began with a lot of confusion, didn't it? It didn't begin with certainty. It didn't begin with truths and facts and absolutes. It began with a lot of people sitting there scratching their head and wondering what in the world is going on here. And namely, what we're reading about here is the confusion of the women that were the first to arrive at the tomb of Jesus. The Bible tells us that Mary Magdalene, when she looks in the tomb, they get there, the stone in front of the mouth of the tomb, the opening of the tomb had been rolled away. They look inside expecting to see the body of Jesus, but he's not there. His body's gone. And so immediately, I guess she kind of deduces in her mind, they've moved the body of Jesus. Where have they taken him? Maybe the authorities and maybe the enemies of Christ have moved his body to a more secure location so that nobody would come and steal it at night. But there was a lot of confusion and a lot of questions. And as you read through John chapter 20, what you'll find is that confusion and those questions spilled over from this group of women into the disciples of Jesus themselves, the 12 apostles. Even Peter and John, at first, they didn't really know what to think, or they didn't know what to make of it. We'll talk about, Lord willing, tonight what they saw that made them believe in that tomb when they looked. But in the beginning, they weren't real sure about exactly what was going on. I want to focus, though, this morning upon Mary Magdalene, because she was one of the eyewitnesses of the resurrection of Christ. There's some interesting things you'll learn about Mary Magdalene as you study her throughout the Bible. She was the last that is mentioned to be at the foot of Jesus' cross. She is the first to be mentioned at the tomb of Christ. And she, on this day, on the day that Jesus was resurrected from the dead, she had to answer 3 questions that were asked to her. And so I want us to think about those 3 questions, and I would like for us to answer those 3 questions today on, again, what a lot of people consider the day that Jesus was resurrected from the dead. The first question that was asked to her that she had to answer was this: why are you crying? And if you go down to John chapter 20 and you look down at the beginning of that verse 13, it says that Mary stood without at the sepulchre weeping. And as she wept, she stooped down and looked into the sepulchre, and seeth 2 angels in white sitting, the one at the head and the other at the feet, where the body of Jesus had lain. And they say unto her, Woman, why weepest thou? She saith unto them, Because they have taken away my Lord, and I know not where they have laid him. The first question that Mary had to answer had to do with her sorrows. And the first beings that asked her this question, not the last, but the first, were these 2 angels that we read about sitting within the tomb of Jesus. Now, immediately after she gives them her answer, she says, they've taken away the body of Jesus, and I don't know where his body is, where they've hidden him, or where they've laid him. That's why I'm crying. John goes on to record in verse 14 that when she had thus said, she turned herself back and saw Jesus standing, and knew not that it was Jesus. And Jesus saith unto her, Woman, why weepest thou? You stop for a moment and think about that question. Try to think about yourself. Put yourself in the shoes of Mary Magdalene. And I haven't learned a lot of things about women over the years. I've tried. I haven't learned a lot, but I've tried. But one of the things I've learned is this. When you run into a crying woman, the first question you ask is not, what's going on? Or why are you crying? The first thing, and young guys take some notes here, the first thing that you do is you console them, right? You offer some encouragement. You offer some support. Eventually, the why and the what is going to come out. But the first thing that they're really looking for is consolation. And so I want you to think about Jesus and these angels here asking this question to Mary. And to us, it might seem like a pretty weird question to be asking, right? Why are you crying? They knew why she was crying. They knew what was going on within her life. They knew that the questions that she had and the emotions that she was experiencing. But then again, is it really that strange of a thing to ask somebody who believes in Jesus? Why are you crying? Why are you sorrowing? The Bible teaches us as Christians, we're not to be immune to tears here upon this earth. God doesn't command us to do that. Some people are better than others at holding those tears back. Some people are better at suppressing their sorrow and their emotions to others. But all of us, at some point, at least if not outwardly, inwardly, we are going to be sorrowful. We are going to be crying. And the question becomes this: why are you crying? Who is it that's causing you to cry? Or why, or what is it that's causing you to cry? And there's a statement that's recorded in the Old Testament, very powerful statement in Psalm chapter 30 and verse 5. But it's made about those who would put their faith and their trust in God. And it simply says this is the latter part, the second part of the verse. It says, weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. There are things in this life that we sorrow about, that we cry over. But those tears and those sorrows that we're expressing are not tears without hope. They're not tears without a future. And while we may weep for a night, the main lesson of the Bible is joy is coming for us in the morning. There's something better for us in the future. It's often been said, in fact, we have a song which very closely expresses these words. But we may not know what the future holds, but we know who holds the future. And because of that, we know what is going to happen to us beyond this life. And I want you to think about these words that are expressed to Mary. Why is she crying? Because Jesus is dead. But is he dead? He may have been dead for 3 days and 3 nights, but now he's alive. Joy comes in the morning. And Luke, he adds some additional words, maybe some words even of irony to this account of Jesus' resurrection. If you look over in Luke chapter 24, I'm not going to spend a lot of time there. You can just keep your finger there in John 20 if you want. But here's a question that these two angels ask Mary and the women who are crying and looking in the tomb and searching for the body of Jesus. They simply ask the question, why are you seeking the living among the dead? Think about that. Where do you go to look for somebody who's alive? I mean, we might go to a number of different places. We might go to their workplace. We might go to their favorite fishing hole, or we might go to some place that they're known to, engage in their favorite hobbies. But do you know where we don't go to look for people who are alive? We don't go to the cemetery, do we? We don't go to the graveyard. We're not looking inside of coffins and looking inside of tombs, unless I guess we're playing hide and seek. We might do something like that. But normally it's not something that you do when you're looking for somebody who is alive. And what they didn't realize is these tears that they were expressing, that there was so much sorrow and emotion and remorse over, that soon those tears were going to turn into a morning of joy. So why are you crying? This is just temporary. Something greater, something better is coming for you in the future. The second question that I want for us to think about that Mary answered on that day Jesus was resurrected, and again, one we need to answer today too, is who or what are you looking for? Now, I know this isn't proper English if you're going to put it in that way. It should be for whom or for what are you looking, but we're going to speak on terms that everybody can understand today. Good old Southern Missouri. Who are you looking for? Or what are you looking for? That's the next question that Jesus asked her. in verse 15, after he asked the question, why are you crying? Why are you weeping? He said, whom seekest thou? She was looking for somebody, wasn't she? She wasn't just looking for anybody. She wasn't just looking for everyone. There was a certain person that she had in mind, and that person was Jesus Christ. In the latter part of verse 15, the second part, John goes on recording this event. He said, she, supposing him to be the gardener, that is Jesus, saith unto him, Sir, if thou hast borne him hence, tell me where thou hast laid him, and I will take him away. Jesus saith unto her, Mary. She turned herself and said unto him, Rabboni, which is to say, Master. Who was Mary looking for? She was looking for somebody. And the answer is she was looking for the greatest being that anybody can ever search for. She was looking for God in the flesh. She was looking for the second person of the Godhead, Jesus Christ. And everybody, you think about this in life, everybody is looking for someone or something, aren't they? Some people are looking for the next best thing. Some people are looking for things that are better in life, things that are bigger in life. Some people are looking for the next dollar or the next thrill or the next notch in their belt. Some people are looking for somebody to love them. Some people are looking for their husbands or their wives, or some people are looking to have children. Some people are looking for a family and looking for acceptance. All of us are looking for someone and for something. Those things aren't necessarily wrong to look for, but what I want to emphasize to you, those things that I just mentioned, they all have one thing in common, and that is they're earthly. They're temporal, they're temporary in nature. They're not things that are going to last forever. And what the Bible indicates to us is there's somebody bigger that we should be looking for. And there's something bigger that we should be looking for than just the things of this life have to offer to us. I think about Hebrews chapter 11. That's often referred to, or we refer to it as Faith's Hall of Faith. Tremendous list of men and women who we try to imitate as Christians today. But if you go down to Hebrews chapter 11 and verse 13, he starts out the verse with this. He said, now all these, I want you to just stop and think about that statement there. All of these people that I've already talked about and that are talked about in this chapter, all of these died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off, and were persuaded of them and embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. For they that say such things declare plainly that they seek a country. And truly, if they had been mindful of that country from whence they came out, they might have had opportunity to have returned. But now they desire a better country, that is an heavenly, wherefore God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he hath prepared for them a city. I want you to think about this question. All of these, what were they looking for? All of these people. And the chapter, or the examples, I guess I should say, start with that of Abel. And then the Hebrew writer talks about a man by the name of Enoch. And then he talks about Noah. He talks about Abraham and Sarah and Jacob and Isaac. What were all these people looking for? Were they looking for a piece of land to call their own? Were they looking for as many possessions in life as they could get here upon this earth? Were they looking for lots of money to put into a bank account? Were they looking for earthly fame and recognition? The Hebrew writer says they were looking for something better than all those things. A better country that's called heaven. And so the lesson for us should be this. Make sure that we're looking for things that are better than this life has to offer us. Make sure we are looking for the one who is better than anybody else that we can have a relationship with in this life. And if you aren't looking for Jesus, the lesson for us is you better start looking for him. Mary was looking for him. And don't stop looking for him until you found him. That's what makes life better. He's the one thing and the one person that's going to bring meaning and purpose to our life above all others. So who or what are you looking for? The third question that I want us to think about this morning. This one isn't as obvious as the other two. It's not one that Jesus just asked Mary point blank. But the implication is there. Are you going to tell other people about me? You know, here's what Jesus tells her in verse 17. Jesus said unto her, touch me not, for I am not yet ascended to my Father. But go to my brethren and say unto them, I ascend unto my Father and your Father, and to my God and your God. Mary Magdalene came and told the disciples that she had seen the Lord, and that he had spoken these things unto her. Jesus gave Mary specific instructions to go tell others about him, to go tell others about what he had done, to go tell others about what he had said to her. And Matthew and Luke's account provide some additional details to us that make this part of the story a little bit more meaningful to me. In Matthew chapter 28 and verse 8, Matthew records, we read in John there that Mary did what the Lord told her to do, but I want you to notice how she did it, as Matthew records in Matthew 28. He says there, and they, he's talking about that group of women, and they departed quickly from the sepulchre with fear and great joy, and did run to bring his disciples word. Not only did they tell others about Jesus, they did it quickly. They were running to tell others about Christ. They weren't wasting any time. They weren't going to squander any opportunities. And do you think when they showed up in the city and when they ran into other people, they said, now, let's not jump the gun here and let's not press the issue too much. Let's just wait until the conversation kind of naturally comes up about Christ, and then we'll tell them what Jesus told us to say. Do you think it ever crossed their mind where they thought, well, you know, probably that person over there, there's no need to tell them because they won't believe anyway, right? They don't care about it. That person over there, probably don't need to include them in this conversation either. The Bible tells us they departed quickly and they did run to bring this word about the resurrection of Christ to the rest of the world. In Luke chapter 24 and beginning in verse 9, here's what Luke records. He says, and they returned from the sepulchre and told all these things unto the 11 and to all the rest. It was Mary Magdalene and Joanna and Mary the mother of James and other women that were with them, which told these things unto the apostles. I want you to notice verse 11 though. And their words seemed to them as idle tales, and they believed them not. You know, I brought up the idea, do you ever think these women in their mind began questioning who's going to believe what I say and who's not? But the Bible tells us that the words of these women to the apostles, not to the world, not to the enemies of Christ, to the apostles of Christ, the words of these women were like people who had been admitted to an insane asylum. I can't imagine, and I kind of get tickled picturing this in my mind, but have you ever talked, no offense women, but have you ever talked to a group of excited women? You know, where they're really passionate about something and their enthusiasm is bubbling over. And, you know, I imagine one woman's talking about this and another chimes in, she starts talking about this. Pretty soon the apostles are like, these guys are crazy, you know. We can't believe a word that they're saying. But did they believe? The Bible says they didn't believe a word the women were saying. But they still told them, did they? They still told them because Jesus told them to do it. Even after the apostles, remember Jesus appears to them on the very day that he's resurrected from the dead. And one of those apostles was missing from the number. Remember Thomas, the story of Thomas? And we read in John chapter 20, now the apostles are in the same boat that Mary was in when she was telling them this story, and they didn't believe. And so the apostles say, are we going to tell Thomas or not? The Bible says, but Thomas, one of the 12, called Didymus, was not with them when Jesus came. The other disciples therefore said unto him, we have seen the Lord. But he said unto them, except I shall see the hands of the print of the nails, and put my finger into the print of the nails, and thrust my hand into his side, I would not believe. Should we tell Thomas or not? We know he won't believe us, right? I think sometimes when we talk about Jesus and about what He's done and about His resurrection, that's the attitude that we have. Well, I'm not going to tell them because they'll never believe. Listen, I know I've said this 100 times, but I'm going to say it again this morning. Our job is to not make people believe the story of the resurrection of Christ. Our job is to tell them. Jesus didn't tell Mary, you go in and make these people believe the story that I'm resurrected from the dead. He said, you go in and you tell people the story of my resurrection. And then it's up to each individual to take the evidence and the facts that are presented to them and to examine them in an honest way and to make an honest decision based upon those facts. But our job is to tell. And the question is this, are we going to tell others about the resurrection of Christ? You know what those women did when they realized that Jesus was resurrected from the dead? It's recorded in Matthew 28 and verse 9. The Bible says they came unto Him and held Him by the feet and worshiped Him. They fell to their knees and worshiped Him. Whenever you realize who Jesus is, that should be the reaction that we experience. We should fall to our knees, worshiping the one who is resurrected from the dead. My question for you this morning is, have you done that? Have you fallen on your knees before the one who after 3 days and 3 nights came out of the grave, out of the heart of the earth? Have you declared Him to be your master? And the questions that we have this morning are namely, well, 2 different groups of people. The first really cover us, those of us who are Christians. Why are we crying? Are there sorrows? Are there tears? Are there emotions to be had in this life? Yes, sorrow, weeping endures for a night, but joy is coming in the morning. That's the story of the resurrection. Jesus was dead for 3 days and 3 nights, but after that He was alive, and the tears were turned into joy. The second question is this, who or what are you looking for? God offers us something better than this life has to offer. And so let's be sure we're looking for the one who can do the most for our relationship. Let's be sure that we're looking for the things that are eternal and not the things that are earthly in nature. And then the third question, I'm going to use it. It's a question for us as Christians this morning. But it's also a question for those who may not be Christians. And I kind of want you to think about this and ask yourself the question, am I a skeptic? Well, you wouldn't be the first, and you probably aren't going to be the last. In fact, when we read the story here of the resurrection of Christ, even Jesus' own disciples were skeptics in the beginning, weren't they? But what they did is they examined the evidence. And remember what happened when Thomas examined the evidence? He came up with a confession that's recorded in John 20 and verse 28. He said, "My Lord and my God." My job isn't to make you believe in the resurrection of Christ. My job is to tell you about it. And once I've told you about it, it's your job to honestly examine the evidence and to believe it. So, 3 questions for us to answer on Easter.